The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. We are back. Lovin' baseball when we were 12 and innocent. And as Michael Duca, one of my two guests, remarked, he's never been innocent. And I said, he never will be. Jerry Feitelberg is the other guest. Michael, when you turned 12, it was 1963. When Jerry turned 12, it was 1950. And the reason I pick age 12 for this series of podcasts is that generally it's when intellect meets enthusiasm. You'll never be as enthused about baseball as you were when you were 12. And the beauty of being 12 is it's all coming together intellectually. I think most people who were fanatics at 12 remain fanatics all their lives, and but never as enthused as when one was 12. So let's start with Michael. What was happening in 1963 that you liked? What was happening that you didn't like?
Well, actually, Ralph, I was an early bloomer, and I would say 1962 was a more seminal year for me, not only because the Giants actually made it to the World Series, but because my family moved from Northern California to Southern California during the rain break in that World Series. And so I had to go through the agony of the last three games of that World Series from San Diego, where there were no Giants fans and not that many baseball fans because it was still a minor league city. So 63 was a rough adjustment for me because all of my baseball had to be absorbed through the voice of Vin Scully.
Oh, well, who incidentally was a lifelong Giant fan? Vin Scully was.
Of course he was.
And what else would he be? But he was a big fan of Mel Ott, a very underrated slugger in baseball history. Can you give me some Mel Ott stories if you have them? Michael.
Mel preceded me.
Okay.
And while it's not that easy to remember 1963, one thing I know for sure is that if it wasn't in Collier's Encyclopedia or the World Almanac, I probably didn't have access to it. There was just no opportunity back then to pull out your phone and look stuff up, or even if you were 12, there wasn't that much opportunity to go to the library and look stuff up. It was a different time, and if you had library time, you were outside playing Burnout or Pickle.
Right, or what I do, I bought a pitchback, a net where you could throw the ball into it and have a catch. And that entertains me in my dotage. Who took you to your first game, Michael?
My first game, my dad took me to see the Sacramento Solons at Edmonds Field. Woody Held was playing for them, Winston Brown, Winston Yanis, Terry Fox, and I can't remember for sure who they were playing. I think it was the Portland Beavers. I remember Kuno Berrigan, who wound up living in the Sacramento area, was catching for the other team. And
He
I
sold
was
insurance in Sacramento for many years, Kuno, and I think he's still with us, as a matter of fact.
I believe so. I think he lives in Grass Valley.
Wow. Grass
And
Valley
I was 6.
is where the Tracys are living now. Patrick and Julia Tracy. Julia Park Tracy, living in Grass Valley. And I could even tell you the mayor of Grass Valley back then was a fellow that I sold insurance with, George Durakawa, if that name rings a bell. A long time ago. Sacramento had Marshall Bridges at one time or another. Who later pitched with the Yankees. So, a great baseball city. I recently interviewed Jerry Weinstein, who was the king of junior college baseball. Sac City was a dynasty for bringing minor league players and major league players, future major league players along. So
Larry Boa,
exactly. I'm blanking on guys from that era, and I don't know why. I guess it's because I'm 76 years old. So your first game was a minor league game. Am I correct?
Yes, my first game was a minor league game. My first major league game was game 2 of a 2-game series in L.A. The Giants played the Dodgers, and I sat in the 3rd row from the top of the Los Angeles Coliseum. It was 1958.
Wow.
Maybe 1959. Maybe 1959 because Sandy Koufax had pitched the night before. And I think I saw Johnny Padres pitch.
Well, 1959 was the only thing that I remember positive about Walter O'Malley. He sponsored a Roy Campanella night where the proceeds went to Roy, and he had 80,000 that they held. It was a night game, and each one of the fans lit a candle in Campy's honor, and that was the only heartfelt thing that Walter O'Malley ever did. I mean, I'm still pissed that the Brooklyn Dodgers and the New York Giants were taken from New York. I was 11 years old and about to turn 12 myself. It was very traumatic for a kid who grew up with baseball, and you lose your team, and tore the hell out of the spirit of New York. They had to wait 5 years to get a National League team. Let's talk to Jerry a little bit. And Jerry Feitelberg, tell me about 1950, your first year as a baseball fan, or as a 12-year.
Well, 1950, I was 11 years old, and that year I remember the Yankees playing the Phillies in the World Series. But I as I said, I turned 12 in November, so the 51 season was my 12th year. And of course, during that season, the Boston Braves, they weren't too good. They still had players on their team that went on to Milwaukee when they left after the 52 season. Some of the pitchers were, you may remember, Warren Spahn, Johnny Singh, Lou Burdette was on that team. Vern Bickford was on that team. They had Walker Cooper was the catcher, and Bob Elliott was their third baseman. He was the MVP in 1947. Longtime Giant Buddy Kerr was on that team. Johnny Lovin was on that team. Gene Malk, Sibby Sisti, Earl Torgerson. So they had some players. They also had the Giant third baseman, former Giant third baseman Sid Gordon was on the team with the Braves. Tommy Holmes, Sam Jethro. So those were some. They had some players, but they didn't win the league. And as we discussed before the podcast, the Giants were 13 and a half games back in August behind the Dodgers, and that was some performance that they did because they came all the way back to force a playoff with the Dodgers. It was the best 2 out of 3, I believe, and of course Bobby Thompson hit the game-winning home run off of Ralph Franker to send the Giants to the World Series. I was going to school at the Latin School, which was I had to take the streetcar to get home, but I got home in time to actually see the home run. We had a TV, and of course it was black and white in those days. And I saw Bobby Thompson hit the home run. I saw Stanky run up the sidelines to make sure that Leo DeRocha didn't get on the field and interfere or do something so that Thompson would be called out or do something. So that, and of course, then we heard Russ Hodges' call later. I only heard the TV call. Hodges was on radio, and that was quite a season. And now, as a kid, I would root for the Red Sox. Yeah.
Gary, was it?
Yes, sir.
Mutual Network that you were listening to? Mutual Broadcast Network?
I don't remember. I just know the game was on TV. Whatever TV station was on, who was doing the World Series that year. So it could have. I don't know if it was ABC, NBC, or CBS. It could have been Mutual. Could have been. Just don't remember. But I remember the play. Yeah.
I want to know about Sam Jethro. You glossed over him a little bit. He came to the majors after his prime.
Yes, he was. I think he came up in 1950, 40. He wasn't on the World Series team in 1948, so maybe he came up in 50. And he came up later in his prime, and he was the center fielder for the Braves. And he probably played in the Negro Leagues. He was much older when he came up, as I recall. But I do recall he made some poor plays out in center field, but he still was a good player for the Braves. Now the Braves, and I don't remember their attendance in 1951, but in 1952, their last season at Braves Field, they drew. Everyone talks about the A's attendance, how bad it was, under 10,000 a game. Of course, in those days, they only played 77 games at home. They played 154 game schedule, but the Braves drew 281,000 people for 77 games. I can't even think of the math of that. It was just terrible. There was just nobody there to see in the Braves play. The Red Sox
was a huge drop-off from 51 when they drew almost 500,000.
Even so, 500. I think the only time they drew 1 million was in 1948 when they won the pennant, and they barely made it back. Yeah. The Miracle Braves were the 1914 Braves with Robert Moranville, and they swept the Philadelphia Athletics had all these great players, and they swept. The Braves swept the A's 4 straight in 1914, and then it was a 34-year drought to 1948. And we got a TV in 1948, and they televised all the Braves game. I think they're home and away, or maybe all the home games for the Braves and all the home games for the Red Sox. I don't remember, But I, as a kid, I had my appendix out. I was home for a while, so I got to watch all the games while I was in school that year. And if anyone asked me, was he safe? The answer is no. He was out by a foot. He was called safe in a very controversial play, and they didn't have any replay in those days. So the Braves were my first team. The Red Sox. The reason the Braves were my first team is because my dad took me to see the St. Louis Cardinals with Stan Musial and Red Shane play the Braves, either in 1947 or 1948. Was either 8 or 9 years old at the time. And I don't remember who won the game. I think it was the Cardinals, but I don't remember. But in 1951, the Braves didn't make it to the World Series. The Red Sox were on the downswing at that point in time because after the 48 and 49 seasons, they just weren't as good, and they weren't a factor. And what I used to do is, whatever National League team would win the pennant, I would root for them. So I would, and of course, as a kid, I rooted for the Dodgers more often. But if the Giants were in the World Series, like they were in 51 against the Yankees, just pulling for the Giants to win the 51 series. And of course, what they did in 54 when they swept the Giants, that was unbelievable. But I would root for the Phillies, and of course, and the Braves moved to Milwaukee in spring training in 1953. And they went up against the Yankees twice, 57 and 58. And they won in 57, lost in 58. But as 12-year-olds, it was just fascinating to follow the season and to see the playoffs in the National League, and what the Giants did to overcome the Dodger lead. It was just wonderful, and I enjoyed the season. Of course, Willie Mays broke in that year too, and you remember Mays was 0 for 20 when he broke in. And his first hit was a home run off Warren Spahn.
Right.
A home run that went over the roof of the left field stands in the Polo Grounds.
There you go. And the Polo Grounds was such a weird shaped baseball field. What was it? 250 feet down the right field and left field lines.
Yep.
Yeah, and then it went out to almost 500 feet in center field.
493, I think.
493, yeah. And what was it? Vic Wertz's blast, and it was about 485 feet, and Willie Mays made that wonderful catch and throw in the 54 World Series. It was just unbelievable. In any other park, that would have been a home run. They'd say, what a monster shot off of Vic Wertz's bat. But Willie caught it. He was just amazing.
Well, there are two parks where that would have been, three parks actually where that would have been caught. Old Griffith Stadium.
Oh, in Washington, okay.
Old Braves Park was 500 feet to center field. And then there was a ballpark in Los Angeles for a couple of years that was really a football stadium. And while everybody remembers the screen in left field, the 40-foot screen to make it play more fair, nobody remembers the fact that straightaway center field was 502 feet, and it was in the dark.
Oh,
because
yeah.
there weren't lights out on that end of the field.
Yeah, I don't remember Braves Field being that deep. I didn't think it was that deep.
Well, I could be wrong about that, but Ralph has green cathedrals. He can look it up.
Yeah.
Okay, I will, but I want to interject that the Yankee Stadium had just as much room in center field as almost any park as well. So
that's true. They put a cemetery out there.
Right. The monuments. And when we were kids, they let us on the field at the end of the game, and we'd go out the back exit and stop every time. Even though I wasn't a Yankee fan, I would worship those monuments. I looking back, I just worship the memory of the New York Yankees that I watched in the 50s and 60s. What a great dynasty.
What did they win for? from 1947 to 1960, what did they win? 15 pennants and 10 and 12 World Series, something like that. Some of them, they just dominated for that third. Was it how many years? 14 seasons from 47 to 60, and then they kept on going. They won the pennant in 61, 62, 63, and 64.
As a New Yorker, we felt, growing up as a kid, we felt it was a birthright to have the World Series every year. And not only was it the Yankees, but they were playing the Dodgers and the Giants most of the time. So, what a great way to grow up.
I think in that era, the only time they missed not having a New York team in the World Series was '48 when the Braves played the Cleveland Indians, now the Guardians. But the Yankees were in '47. Well, you know all those, and they played the Phillies, but that was the Yankees were still in '50 and '54. The Giants were in it. '56, '57, '58, '59. It was the L.A. Dodgers and the White Sox, but. You're right. It was a mecca for baseball. The New York fans always had a team in the World Series.
You know what's interesting, Jerry? You said if it weren't the Braves in the World Series, you'd root for a National League team. In 1957, the Giants announced they were moving. I was an 11-year-old kid and rooted for the Braves heavily in the World Series. And out of anger for the Giants, combination of that, but they were a great team. 57, 58, the Braves peaked, and you mentioned Johnny Logan. He was a Boston Brave first, but a terrific shortstop with the Milwaukee Braves. Very underrated. And they were a solid team all the way. Del Crandall, Joe Adcock, Eddie Matthews.
Del Crandall played in Boston. I think Eddie Matthews may have played in 1952. But Henry Aaron came up in '53. They had Bob Buell. They had I forgot who there's a pitcher. Their pitching was good when they moved to Milwaukee, and of course they became, I think, the first National League team to draw 2 million people in one season. And it was just amazing how and they moved there in '53, and then they moved to Atlanta in '65. It's amazing how the Braves flamed out in Milwaukee, and they've been in Atlanta ever since. And then Milwaukee had to get an expansion team, and they got the Seattle Pilots to Milwaukee. And I think Skip Lockwood told the story. He was in spring training when they heard that the Pilots were going to Milwaukee. And when they got to Milwaukee, they had the Pilots uniform, and they had a tape over, and it said Milwaukee on it. Their jerseys.
Right. Amazing how every time there's a carpetbagging story where a team leaves, some kid suffers irreparable damage along the way. So I hope the A's can keep that in mind on their journey to Las Vegas. Is that going to happen?
We don't know yet. I think if they were going to go to Las Vegas, the deal would have happened already. So they're having trouble. I think they're having trouble because Las Vegas is not going to put up any public money for them to come. And John Fisher wants OPM, other people's money, and a huge development deal. He's not going to get that money. He might be able to build a stadium, but he'll have to pay for it himself. Here in Oakland, he's got that big development deal, which would be beneficial to Oakland. The mayor says she's not really that opposed to it, but some of the grant money they hoped we were getting didn't come through, so maybe they're working on that to get it. So it's 50. It's still 50-50 right now.
There's really only one word you need to understand to figure out this whole thing, and that word is greed.
Yeah, money. How much money can Fisher make?
Now, if you look at what they're arguing over, the bone of contention is less than $400 million, which is a lot of money to you and me, but that's out of $13 billion with a B.
Exactly.
For the project. So that's like 3%. We're arguing over 3%.
Yeah, exactly. And the benefit to the city of Oakland would be phenomenal to build the property tax revenues, the retail that would come in. Hopefully people would shop there. The business, they'd have businesses there. They have a theater plan. It will be a tremendous boon. California has mandated that the cities find additional housing. They're fighting over the amount of what they call affordable housing or low-cost housing. I think Fisher wants to.
More greed.
I think we might have lost Jerry. Okay. He'll be back, I'm sure. We still have you, Michael?
I am here. You're stuck
all right,
with me.
Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm Ralph Tycho, Michael Duca, Jerry Feitelberg, our guest. We're talking old-time baseball. We have one thing in common. Through it all, we have a love and a passion for the game that nothing's going to stop us. It's going to be, there's Jerry.
I'm back.
See, nothing stopped Jerry.
Nothing stopped Jerry. I was just saying that our love and passion for the game keeps up. How many years is this for you, Jerry? Maybe 70 years?
More than that. My first memories of the game are the 1946 World Series with the Red Sox play the St. Louis Cardinals. Way back when. I listened to the games on the radio. Wow. So how many years is that? That's 77 years.
Wow.
And this is season number 69 for my recollection. My earliest living memory is watching the catch on the evening news in 1954.
Wow, that's great.
Oh, wow. And when you call it the catch, you got to call it the catch in the throw. The throw is what really made even Willie said he knew he was going to make that catch. It wasn't out of the realm of possibility to him. But the throw kept the double play in order and killed the rally for the Cleveland.
And my favorite story about that at bat, Ralph, is that the Giants brought in a little left-handed reliever named Don Liddle, Liddle.
Right.
He faced Dick Wirtz, and he threw one pitch, and Wirtz hit it 490 feet into an out. And the manager went and got Liddle, and when Liddle walked back to the dugout, he tossed his glove in the corner and said, "Well, I got my man."
And those who back in the days when players worked after the season, Don Liddle was the snap-on tool guy in his town of Illinois. He was just a working stiff, like all of them, with few exceptions. The Mazes, Manners, DiMaggio made a shit ton full of money. Virtually none of them made more than $35,000 in a year. Seems like a lot of money, but because of the way things were, they were well paid. But
and this will blow you away, Ralph. They're talking about $500 million being the starting point of negotiations for Ohtani.
Wow. Now,
I'm old enough to remember when Sandy Koufax and Don Drysdale held a joint holdout for $100,000.
Yeah, that was what, 66, 64,
I think.
One of those years, and they were the first two to hold out as a team. They had, and I don't think they had an agent.
Oh no, there were no agents then.
No agents, yeah. So
guys like Dan Topping would tell you, if you think you need an agent, go to Broadway.
Yeah, and George Weiss used to tell the players, "We're not going to pay you the extra money because you're going to get a World Series check."
Yeah.
It was assumed, really.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. What's your favorite baseball memory, Michael? All time.
Boy, that is a tough question to answer. I think I'm going to pick Dave Draveki's comeback game.
Oh, yes.
Okay. And Ralph and Michael, mine was the Game 4 of the 2004 World Series, when the Red Sox won the World Series for the first time in 86 years. That was my most favorite memory of all time.
Wow.
I can understand that. It's, having been a Giants fan for 7 decades, that's a lot of frustration. But the problem is that we had so much success over a 5-year period that it's hard to pick one out of those.
Oh, yeah, they were great. I think 2010, though, has to be a highlight that year. The first one after so many years.
Yes.
Yeah, it does, and it was. I took a red eye to Texas for Game 5 because I said there is no way on God's green earth I'm going to miss this, and I know it's happening tonight.
Wow. My favorite memory? My grandfather had taken me to the Polo Grounds in 1951 before Willie was called up, and then again after. And my favorite memory is seeing the gleam in my grandfather's eye when Willie did most anything. He was incredibly excited on the baseball field. He would lose his cap. He would run the bases. He would throw from deep in right center field. He was just spectacular. And he was a showman. And he considered himself a showman. And the look in my grandfather's eye was my favorite memory. That's it. What can I tell you? It warms, those are the memories that warm our hearts. Looking back, we could just sit and daydream about the way it was. I'll ask you guys, what is it about those days that you miss the most? Really?
Oh, the days I could go to a ball game. I was a kid, and I would take the streetcar, and most people don't realize that I could go either the Braves games or the Red Sox games in those days. The ballparks are only a mile apart, if you could believe it. And the streetcar, I would take the streetcar from Mattapan Square to downtown Park Street, the Ashmont station, then catch the train to Park Street, and then take the streetcar to either Fenway Park or to Braves Field. It cost me all of 5 cents. And for 50 or 75 cents, I could sit in the bleachers as a kid. And if I had a buck and a half, I could sit in the grandstand. Prices were reasonable. And it was just a different time. The players, they didn't have free agency. You knew who was going to be on the team from year to year. And in those days, I read the newspaper every day. They used to have the box scores, and they'd have the batting averages, and I could see what the players were doing, and I had all the numbers in my head. And if I go to the game, a program was 10 cents. And there was a guy that used to sell peanuts outside the Fenway Park, and for 10 cents you get a bag that would cost you 25 cents at the stadium. You get a bag of peanuts from him. And I'd sit out in the bleachers, and if I want, and some days I'd go to a doubleheader, and for my 50 or 75 cents, I saw 2 games, and it was reasonable. Or I go with the kids from the neighborhood. We'd go to the games. So things were different. It was safer for kids. Kids were not getting shot in the schools in those days, and it was just a much gentler time. And I appreciated that, and I was able to love baseball, fall in love with baseball, and still in love with baseball all these years later. Just love it.
Good. How about you, Jerry? How about you, Malcolm? How about you, Malcolm?
I think probably when you were a kid, Ralph, you probably wanted to grow up to be Gil Hodges, and Jerry, you probably wanted to grow up to be Teddy Ballgame. When I was a kid, believe it or not, I wanted to grow up to be Lon Simmons. And what I miss about those days, other than Lon himself, who became a friend in his older age, is the magic of being able to recreate Busch Stadium in my mind without having ever seen it. Because listening to an entire season in the summertime in Sacramento when it was 100 degrees and you didn't even want to move, but you were listening to these guys who were playing ball a half a country away, and just the word pictures, the descriptions, the familiarity, the voices you knew that you were going to hear, everything about that was just idyllic.
Yeah, and Sacramento, the weather was baseball weather all the time. And
I would get up at 7 o'clock in the morning in the summertime and go catty corner across the street to the empty lot. And by 7:15, there were enough kids there for a game, and we played until we were yelled home after dark.
Yelled by your parents.
Yep.
Who did you emulate on the field? Who did you think you were when that pitch was thrown?
Well, if you were right-handed like I was and you didn't think you were Willie Mays, then you must have been dead. I mean, who else could you possibly want to be in Giants territory?
Yes. Jerry, how about you? Who did you want to be?
Who wouldn't want to be like Ted Williams? Come on, the greatest hitter of all time. And I have to say, though, my favorite player in baseball was not a Red Sox. He wasn't a Giant. He was a Brooklyn Dodger. It was Jackie Robinson. Robinson, to me, he was just a champ. I loved the way he played. I loved what he stood for. And he was just my inspiration. So that's all I can say. I really love Jackie Robinson as a player and as a person.
Well, wow. Nice memories, guys.
Yep.
This has been a great podcast. Any predictions on the season? First, you, Jerry.
Well, the A's, I think, are going to be fifth in the division in the AL West. The 4 teams are all better than they are. The Mariners, the Rangers. Of course, the Rangers got Bruce Bochy as their manager, and Mike Maddox is their pitching coach. And the Angels are better, and the Astros are the defending world champions. So it's going to be a tough season for the A's. They have some young players. Maybe they'll do better than they did this year. I don't think they'll lose 102 games, but if they can win 75 games, that'll be an improvement over last year when they won 60. So that would be quite an improvement. But I don't think it's going to be a long season for Oakland. And in the Astros will be there again this year. The Yankees are going to be there. The White Sox and the Guardians will be fighting it out in the Central. So those in the American League. National League, the Padres are going to be tough to beat in the Western Division. The Cardinals probably in the Central, and then the East will be the Braves, the Mets, the Phillies. So those three teams will be fighting it out to win the pennant.
Good. Michael, how about the Giants? What's going on?
Well, a couple of things here. First of all, I think both the Giants and the A's are going to do better than people think they are this year. The A's have a roster that is built to take better advantage of the new rules. They've got a lot of speed, a lot of young kids on that roster with something to prove. And, speed can upset games. So I do think that the A's are going to win in the 70s this year. For a dark horse in the American League, do not sleep on Toronto. That is a devastating lineup, top to bottom. Go look at those guys. They refused to lose today. They got into a slugfest with the Cardinals and came out on top at the end. And their pitching is better than people give them credit for. Tampa Bay is going to have a very interesting team this year. The American League East is going to be a lot of fun. Baltimore is going to be a much improved team this year. There's no weak link in that division. As far as the National League goes, I don't see anybody, assuming that they can stay healthy and intelligent, I don't see anybody knocking the Padres out of the World Series.
Okay. What would surprise you the most this year?
If games took 3 hours and 15 minutes on the average.
That would, yes.
I think the new rules are going to dramatically improve the quality of the product, and it's going to improve it in ways that people aren't even thinking about yet. You're going to see much better defense on the field, both because you need better athletes without the shift, but there's an emphasis on speed, and that translates to defense. And then when you play the games quicker, you don't have guys back on their heels, and they're in the game more, and they play the game better.
It'd be interesting to see if there's less injuries this year too, because of the pace of the game is better. I just think you got to go and play the ball. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'd like to see the less injuries, and the pitchers. It might be better for the pitchers to throw the ball and get into the game more, and less time to think. They got to just thinking in baseball can kill you sometimes.
Yeah, and you mentioned the shift.
Paralysis of analysis.
You mentioned the shift. Players will be put in a position to make their traditional great plays. The double play, this, that, and the other thing. I think we'll see a better brand of ball.
Yeah, hit and run. How about all the hit and runs? And hits up the middle. There were a couple hits up the middle today that wouldn't have been hits last year.
I'm going to tell you something that you're going to have to explain to people under the age of 16 when you go to the game. It's called pitch out. The Giants have not thrown a pitch out since 2017.
Oh, my God.
Holy Toledo. One other negative thing, we talked about the phantom runner, throwovers from first base, not from first base, to first base, attempted pickoffs. That's going to be skewed, as is.
Yeah. They want more stolen bases in the game, Ralph, and the fans want more stolen bases, and the people back in New York want more stolen bases, and that's what they're going to get. It will dramatically change the way the game is played, and it will change it back to the way the game was played when I was 12. Not when you guys were 12, but when I was 12, there was a lot of running in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, with Maury Wills and Lou Brock, and wow, yes, agreed.
And let's not forget Willie Mays was a great base runner.
Well, I remember when Jose Canseco had the first 40-40 season, Willie's comment was, if I'd have known it was such a big deal, I'd have done it 10 times.
Right, and he could have.
Yep.
Willie's ego was intact through it all. He genuinely believed he was the greatest center fielder of his time. And he was. And
I don't know that I could argue with him, but I will say this. I'll go back one generation further and quote the great J. Hannah Dean, who always said, "It ain't bragging if you do it."
Right. And that other great center fielder, Mickey Mantle, admitted that over a career, Willie was the best. Short period of time, Mantle was something else when he first came up. And we never really saw him healthy because in his first year in the World Series, he came up short to give way to DiMaggio on a ball that Willie Mays hit and screwed up his knee. And
on a sprinkler head.
Pardon?
On a sprinkler head.
Yes. In Yankee Stadium. Hey guys, this has been tremendous. Please come back more often, Michael.
You know how to find me. I never say no.
And Michael, I hope to see you on Wednesday at the park, at the Coliseum.
I will try. With the way that they've rearranged the seating, it's not all that easy for me to just drop in now, but I will see what I can do.
Okay, got it. Yeah. Hope to see you.
Michael, how's Kelly getting along?
She had her third chemo on Tuesday, so today is probably the worst day of that, and she has not gotten out of bed today, which is just fine. But in general, she's doing well. She worked. She was there for the entire game on, I guess it was Sunday that they played in San Francisco. Was it?
Monday. They played in San Francisco on Monday.
Okay. Monday. Yeah. I'm sorry. Once I got COVID down in Arizona, I lost complete track of the calendar. All I know is that I'm living on a day that ends in a Y.
Well, the key word is living. Keep doing it, both of you guys, and I'll try to do the same. Love you both. Great show.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Always fun to reminisce with you, Ralph. Take care and be good.
Be good, both of you, and best to her.
Thank you. Until next time.
Till next time.
Adios.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening. Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. This was Lovin' Baseball when we were 12 and innocent. I'm Ralph Tycho. Jerry Feitelberg was a guest. Michael Duca. As I say, Ralph Tycho, the weak link of it all. Be well, and Zygasent, everybody. Happy trails, and adios.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices, and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.